It's November 21st, Charin Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Starting with North Korea's spy satellite launch attempt. The regime has notified Japan of its plan to launch what would be its third attempt to put a military spy satellite into orbit between Wednesday and December 1st. The U.S. warned any deal of sharing military technology between the North and Russia would be a breach of multiple UN Security Council resolutions. The South Korean leader is now in London for a UK state visit upon the invitation of King Charles III. On his first full day on Tuesday, President Yoon will be greeted with a full royal pomp and ceremony. U.S. President Joe Biden says he believes a deal to free hostages in Gaza is close, while the Israeli military says they've located a rocket-making workshop inside a mosque in Gaza City. North Korea has notified Japan that it will launch what appears to be a spy satellite sometime between Wednesday and December 1st. The U.S. voiced concerns over possible military tech sharing between the North and Russia. Our Lee Seung-jae starts us off.
North Korea has notified Japan that will be making its third attempt to send a military reconnaissance satellite into space sometime between November 22nd and December 1st. According to Reuters, Pyongyang notified Japan's Coast Guard and said the planned launch would be in the direction of the West Sea and East China Sea. The notice comes after the regime initially had planned to make its third attempt at a military spy satellite launch in October, following two botched launches in August and May, but did not go ahead with the plan. The U.S. Department of State reiterated its concerns on Monday over possible military cooperation between North Korea and Russia amid the looming spy satellite launch. According to the department spokesperson Matthew Miller, any transfer of military technology between North and Russia would violate multiple UN Security Council resolutions, adding that Washington would continue to monitor the actions of both parties with their regional allies and respond to North Korea's destabilizing behavior. North Korea's third launch comes amid speculation that Russia might have provided military technology for the planned launch in exchange for military equipment and munitions for use in the Ukraine war. Meanwhile, on Monday, South Korea's military warned North Korea to stop any preparations to launch a military reconnaissance satellite immediately. Chief Director of Operations at the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Kang Woo-pil, vowed to take necessary measures if Pyongyang were to ignore the warning. Although Kang did not elaborate on what those measures would be, the government is widely anticipated to partially suspend the Inter-Korean Military Pact signed in 2018, also known as the September 19th Military Agreement. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
U.S. President Joe Biden has said he believes a deal to secure the release of hostages being held by Hamas is close. Biden was speaking to reporters at the White House on Monday. According to a Reuters report, Qatar mediators have been leading negotiations that could potentially lead to the release of 50 hostages taken during a deadly attack on Israel by Hamas last month, in exchange for a 3-day ceasefire and further aid for Gaza. Meanwhile, Israeli troops say they have located a rocket-making workshop inside a mosque in Gaza City. The Israel Defense Forces released photos of the site and accused Hamas of using Islam and the symbols of Islam to create terror. President Yoon landed in London on Monday afternoon as he embarks on his UK state visit. After meeting with Korean expats the same evening, his official engagement will begin on Tuesday. Our Oh Soo-young gives us a preview of what to expect.
President Yoon Suk-yeol's state visit to the United Kingdom will not only be symbolic, celebrating 140 years of Korea-UK relations, but upgrade the two countries' relations to a global strategic partnership. Addressing Korean expats at a dinner banquet shortly after touching down in London on Monday, the South Korean leader said Korea and the UK are partners in the universal values of freedom, human rights and the rule of law.
저의 이번 방문을 통해 한영 양국은 사이버 안보와 방위 산업 등 안보 분야의 협력 체계를 새롭게 구축해 나갈 것입니다. 뿐만 아니라 한영 FTA 개정 협상을 다시 시작해서 공급망과 교역의 협력 기반을 더욱 공고하게 다져 나갈 것입니다. 그리고 양국의 협력 지평을 AI, 원전, 바이오, 우주, 반도체, 청정 에너지 등 첨단 과학기술 분야로도 대폭 확대해 나갈 것입니다.
The first official day of the visit begins on Tuesday. The first couple will receive the full royal treatment, a guard of honour, followed by a welcoming reception and lunch at Buckingham Palace. President Yoon will also pay his respects to Korean war veterans and the grave of the unknown warrior at Westminster Abbey. While reflecting on the past, President Yoon will set out a more comprehensive future partnership between the two liberal democracies based on their shared values, as he delivers a speech in English to members of both houses of parliament.
Clearly, what we need to do is work closely with like-minded partners, partners who believe in the rules-based international system and human rights. So together we can achieve a lot. And I think it's not just about our values, but also we have very complementary capabilities between the UK and Korea.
Following Brexit, the UK is set to renegotiate a free trade agreement with South Korea next year, as the two countries also search for new growth engines amid geopolitical and trade uncertainties. Trade between Korea and the UK increased from $8.8 billion in 2020 to over $12 billion last year, despite the COVID-19 pandemic and global uncertainties. During his visit, Yoon will also attend a business forum, a banquet hosted by the Lord Mayor of London, and a roundtable discussion with notable Korean and UK scientific minds, organised by the Royal Society.
So I think almost on whatever metric of innovation, technological, digital, science, both the UK and Korea are genuine superpowers. And when you look at the challenges of the world today, at the heart of them are often the solutions lie in new innovations and new technologies. So it's absolutely imperative that science and technology is a key partnership or key area of partnership between our two countries.
Laying out the blueprint for future collaboration, Yoon will hold a bilateral summit with Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, with the two expected to announce a set of joint documents called the Downing Street Accord, covering cooperation in semiconductors, artificial intelligence, digital and bio-industries, as well as the maritime sector, cyberspace, clean energy and defence. The documents will also include their shared views on global security issues, including on the Korean Peninsula and the conflicts in the Middle East and Ukraine. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News, London.
Tours to the inter-Korean border village of Panmunjeom will partially resume on Wednesday, 4 months after an American soldier illegally crossed over to North Korea. According to the Unification Ministry on Tuesday, the National Institute for Unification Education will hold a special field trip to Panmunjeom on the day with about 20 people, including policy advisors and North Korean defectors. The decision to partially resume tours came as the Unification Ministry discussed the issue with the United Nations Command, which has jurisdiction over the Joint Security Area in Panmunjeom. The UNC completely suspended Panmunjeom tours on July 18th after U.S. soldier Private Travis King crossed the military demarcation line without permission and defected to the north from a tour. Now, over in Argentina, Argentina has elected libertarian outsider Javier Milei as its new president, swinging the country to the right with radical views to fix the economy. Chung Eun-ju has more.
Right-wing libertarian Javier Milei won Argentina's presidential election on Sunday, following a polarized campaign in which he promised drastic changes to the country's economic strategy amid its worst crisis in 2 decades. According to Argentina's electoral authority, Milei won by a wider than expected margin as he landed some 56% of the vote versus just over 44% for his rival, Peronist economy minister Sergio Massa, when 99.4% of the votes were tallied. It is the highest percentage that a presidential candidate has received since the South American country's return to democracy in 1983. Massa conceded the runoff vote on Sunday evening in a brief speech even before official results were announced. Milei is pledging reforms for Argentina's economy with plans that include shutting the central bank, replacing the peso with the US dollar, and slashing spending by up to 15% of gross domestic product. His challenges are enormous, however, as he will have to deal with soaring inflation nearing 150%, a $44 billion debt program with the International Monetary Fund, and spreading poverty. His victory marks an extraordinary rise for the former television commentator, which drew comparisons to that of former U.S. President Donald Trump. Milei entered the race as a political outsider and self-described anarcho-capitalist. He stirred controversy throughout the campaign for his aggressive rhetoric and expressing support for anti-abortion, ideas such as legalizing the sale of human organs and eliminating all gun laws. He also criticized China and Argentine Pope Francis, though he later walked back on those statements in an effort to win over centrist voters in the weeks following October's first-round vote, when he came second to Massa. Milei also shelved the chainsaw he used to carry in a symbol of his planned cuts in recent weeks to help boost his moderate image. Milei's win shakes up Argentina's political landscape and economic roadmap, along with international trade. He will officially take office on December 10th. 정은주, Arirang News.
Japan's yen is weakening again. In fact, it's so weak that it's on the verge of falling close to the lowest level in 33 years. What does that mean for South Korea and its economy? For more, we're joined by Professor Kimchi this morning. Great to have you with us.
Thank you for having me today.
Professor Kim, first off, what's the reason behind such a weak yen right now?
Well, the main reason of low yen is Japan's zero interest rate policy. Japan's central bank, or Bank of Japan, maintains its key interest rate at 0% from 2001 until today. It means that Japan's key interest rate is set to 0% over the last 20 years, while Bank of Korea's key interest rate is 3.5%, European Central Bank's key interest rate is 4.5%, and U.S. Fed's key interest rate is 5.5%. So relatively speaking, we can easily see that Japan's key interest rate is lower than any other major economies. So this lower interest rate makes Japan's yen weaker than other currencies today.
Right. Significantly lower to those of other countries. Now, this must be a good news for people here in South Korea, though, who may be interested in traveling to Japan. I have a list of people who are visiting Japan, this month and just by the end of the year. That is good news for us for now, right?
Of course. Thanks to weaker yen and stronger Korean won, Korean people can buy more Japanese goods and services with the same amount of Korean won. Therefore, Korean people's the most popular destination today is Japan. Korean people covers about more than 30% of foreign visitors to Japan this year. And Korean people shop Japanese products more than before because of weaker yen.
Right. I've stocked up some on yen a couple months ago, and still it's falling. And some experts say yen's weakness may be a rather red flag for certain businesses and industries, namely Korean export firms. Now, how is that the case? Could you provide some examples of those?
Weaker yen is not 100% good news to Korean people. Because Korea's major industries like automobile, machineries, and petrochemical are competing with Japan's industries. So the depreciation of yen poses a challenge to Korean industries. When both nations offer similar products on global market, a weaker yen can give Japanese products a pricing edge. According to Korean Economic Research Institute, a 1% depreciation of the yen against the dollar result in a 0.2% drop in Korean export. So this casts a shadow over Korean government's hopes for economic rebound in the second half of this year.
Definitely, when speaking of the depreciation. Now, what would it actually mean for the yen then to fall to its lowest value in 33 years? That's over 3 decades. What would that mean?
Right. That means that Japan's manufacturers can be benefited from price competitiveness in global market. And it could be an important, of course, momentum to drive out Japanese economy from 20 years long recession. However, it also provides great results to Japanese economy. Due to the weaker yen, the prices of imported goods and services are quickly increasing in Japan. Particularly higher crude oil price becomes a major factor to increase Japan's inflation today. Japan's inflation actually in October exceeded 3% on year, which is the highest level in 20 years. So there are more and more Japanese to suffer from higher inflation thanks to weaker yen.
Professor Kim, then how long do you think the weakening trend will actually last? I mean, what if the yen continues to weaken even into the new year? Then what happens?
That is a tough question, but when Bank of Japan's new chairman, Mr. Ueda, is appointed in April this year, global market expected that he would raise Japan's key interest rate very soon. But against market's expectation, Mr. Ueda made it clear that he will continue to pursue a zero interest rate policy until Japanese economy recovers from the recession. However, on the other side, Bank of Japan expands the tolerance bands of the government bond interest rate, which has an impact of raising the key interest rate slowly. So it is highly expected that Bank of Japan would raise its key interest rate in the first half of next year. Then Japan's yen will get stronger.
I see. All right, Professor Kim Se-hwan, thank you so much for your insights. As always, you have a great day.
You too. Thanks.
The popularity of South Korea's national dish is reaching all corners of the world as kimchi experts set new records. According to the Korea Customs Service on Tuesday, exports of kimchi reached a record 93 countries this year. The kimchi market is fast growing in North America and Europe, but exports to Japan took up more than 40% of the total amount. The export value is also on track to break previous records. Between January and October this year, total kimchi exports came to over $130 million. Global efforts are being made to take action toward the decarbonization of planet Earth, but new renewable energy sources have not been able to keep up with those needs. Now, a team of researchers have revealed that by 2050, more than 50% of total energy sources will change to solar power. Lee Eun-jin has the details.
Solar power generates electricity using sunlight. Currently, the most widely used solar cells are made of silicon and are cheap and easy to make. But their power generation efficiency fluctuates depending on the weather, and the large area of space that the panels take up means solar is an underused source of energy.
If there was an infinite space for energy storage, we could store all the energy we need from the sun. Then we wouldn't have to rely on thermal or nuclear power. But the supply of large capacity energy storage devices is limited because they are so expensive.
Even considering these drawbacks, a team of researchers at the University of Exeter in the United Kingdom says that by 2050, solar power will become the dominant energy source. Looking at the 11 electricity production key technologies, fossil fuels have been in the lead, having produced 62% of electricity in 2020. But that is expected to drop to 21% in 2050. The research team's analysis shows that between 2010 and 2020, the installation of solar panels increased by 25% per year, which both caused and partly was caused by cost reductions of solar photovoltaics, a non-mechanical device that converts sunlight directly into electricity, which fell by 15% each year. The research team also said that a tipping point for renewable sources leading the power sector could be imminent or has even already passed, and the policy and finance spheres need to prepare for a rapid transition. The latest findings on solar energy have been published in the science journal Nature Communications. Lee Eun-jin, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Kimchi, and we now turn over to stories from around the world. Now, one of the most talked about artificial intelligence companies of the year, OpenAI, is seeing a chaotic and sudden reorganization following the sacking on Friday of CEO and co-founder Sam Altman. Staff at OpenAI have made public threats to the board that they may quit unless the board resigns. 38-year-old Altman became one of the most influential figures in the generative artificial intelligence industry after his company created a popular ChatGPT bot. But OpenAI's board of directors decided to remove him, saying Altman was consistently candid in his communications with the board, hindering its ability to exercise its responsibilities. Since then, Lillian Wang, head of safety systems at OpenAI, posted on X, former Twitter, that more than 650 of 770 employees have already signed a letter demanding Altman's reinstatement as CEO and the board's resignation. Altman's, meanwhile, has joined AI competitors Microsoft, who also own a large stake in OpenAI. Now, moving over to Europe, an Italian court on Monday convicted and sentenced over 200 mafia members and their white-collar associates. The largest mafia trial in 3 decades, the convicted received a total of around 2,200 years of prison sentences. Held in the town of Lamezia Terme in a specially constructed high-security courtroom that can hold up to 350 defendants and 400 lawyers, Monday's sentencing represents one of the most significant blows to Italy's most powerful organized crime group, the Ndrangheta mafia. Although more than 100 individuals were acquitted, notable persons such as former Forza Italia Senator Gianluca Pitelli and former high-ranking police officers were sentenced along with well-known regional mafia bosses. The Ndrangheta mafia from Calabria, Italy, operates in about 40 countries and has a near monopoly on European drug trafficking. Monday's verdict marks the end of the 3-year-long maxi-trial, which was based on the biggest police operation against the crime syndicates since the 1986 to 1992 Palermo maxi trials, which convicted 475 people. Now, on Monday, the latest edition of the United Nations Environmental Programme's Emissions Gap Report was published, with a gloomy forecast in terms of global warming. According to the report, the Earth is set to warm by 2.5 to 2.9 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial times, suggesting that global emissions must be cut by 42% by the end of the decade if the 1.5 degrees Celsius limit target adopted by the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement is to be met. The new report also showed that carbon emissions from the use of coal, oil, and gas rose 1.2% last year. The report comes ahead of the UN's climate change conference, COP28, which begins on November 30th in Dubai. Lastly, the Colombian pop star Shakira has reached a deal with the Spanish prosecutors over allegations of tax evasion, avoiding what may have been a more than 8 years prison sentence. The multiple Grammy and Latin Grammy winner Shakira admitted on Monday a failure to pay a total of $15.8 million in tax to the Spanish government between 2012 and 2014 and received a suspended 3-year sentence and a fine of $7.6 million. Shakira's public relations representative confirmed that she has already paid the owed sum in full, as well as an additional $3.2 million owed in interest.
Good morning. It's a cold start to the day, but brace yourself for a swift temperature boost along with sunshine. And especially noticeable in Gyeongju, where you might witness temperature gaps nearing 20 degrees Celsius within a few hours. Along the east coast, anticipate highs hovering around the 20 degrees Celsius mark today. Meanwhile, the dry weather advisory has been expanded, covering more areas of east of Gangwon-do and Gyeongsang-Bukdo provinces. Given this, exercise caution to avoid any activities that could spark fires. Afternoon highs will be 1 to 3 degrees higher this afternoon. Seoul tops out at 14 degrees. Jeju will be warm and nice at 19 degrees Celsius. Decent air quality nationwide under sunny skies today. The next few days in the capital promise to be the final stretch of this season's high temperatures in the teens. Then keep an eye out for rain midweek. That will bring a significant drop in readings starting Friday. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow for Wednesday's edition at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.